Now, at first glance, the idea that a team of senior managers inside our postal service would receive $3,000 Cartier watches for just doing their job attracting clients sounds awfully gross. It's the sort of lavish $12,000 bonus you might hear being gifted to NBA superstars by their wealthy private owner. But at AusPost, and what for? A prize for attracting some new business to the operation? It did not pass muster for the Prime Minister.
This all happened within an hour, Mr Speaker. So appalled and shocked was I by that behaviour because, Mr Speaker, as any shareholder would in a company raise their outrage if they had seen that conduct by a chief executive, a management or a board, Mr Speaker, they would insist rightly on the same thing. Now, we are the shareholders of Australia Post, Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Australian people. So that action was immediate. That action was immediate. And if the chief executive wishes to stand aside, well, not wishes to stand aside, she's been instructed to stand aside. And if she doesn't wish to do that, Mr Speaker, she can go.
Now, the she the PM is referring to is now stood-aside CEO Christine Holgate, a former British businesswoman and long-time CEO at vitamin giant Blackmores. But before we call for heads to roll and maybe even watches returned, there are oddities associated with the structure of AusPost we need to be aware of. Now, Holgate is the country's highest paid civil servant, earning more than $2.5 million per annum. It sure beats flogging vitamins. As a matter of fact, it's more than double the salary of her counterpart back home in Britain. But this is not a standard government department, nothing like it. AusPost is a government business enterprise with the Australian government as the sole shareholder. It doesn't receive taxpayer dollars to spend. This is a commercial business, which is required by law to meet community service obligations. That's why the CEO said this yesterday.
We've not used taxpayers' money. We are a commercial organisation.
Australia Post is...
We do not receive government funding. We are a commercial organisation. And
You're a government organisation.
It was a recommendation from our chair that these people get rewarded.
They are as close to a private commercial entity, AusPost, as government enterprises can ever be. And that's why the two investigations into AusPost will unveil a wide raft of oddities that will be quite difficult for Australians to get their heads around. AusPost is bonus-driven to the tune of $92 million. They do fraternise with clients, which wouldn't be funded in most federal departments. There's an AusPost corporate box for the AFL Grand Final at the Gabba this weekend, for instance. I doubt whether the CEO will be there. They have always given clients a Christmas party to remember, and their decisions are profit-driven, which is why we don't receive regular mail deliveries anymore. That profit, $53.6 million net, not bad for the shareholder, the Australian government, from $7.5 billion in revenue. Massive. They're in a very different league. So no wonder their COO couldn't recall how he paid for the Cartier watches. They're just a speck in a $92 million bonus scheme. Now, the union is calling for the entire Australia Post board to stand aside, and like all unions, they are notorious opportunists. But Holgate has confirmed it was the intention of the board and its then chairman, John Stanhope. You heard her say that in that last grab. For those who scored the $60 million bank and post deal, they were to be rewarded. That came from the board to her. By the way, the former chairman now says he can't recall approving those gifts. He must have the same viral amnesia that comes out of Victoria. But clearly, at a time when 1 million Australians have lost their jobs, parcel prices have risen, you can't get a human being to handle your complaints on the telephone, and the mail service runs at the speed of snails, it is just a very bad look. And today, the Prime Minister was not backing down.
There wouldn't be a board member of a government agency or a CEO of a government agency that didn't get my message yesterday. I think they got it with a rocket. And so my advice to them is to get it.
You're not mucking around. By the sound of that, it's hard to imagine Christine Holgate ever returning to AusPost. But there'd be board members and CEOs in private enterprise tonight shaking their heads and wondering what all the fuss is about. Because on the scale of public misappropriation and public waste, the truth is, this is just small beer.